This is White Peony Part 2. If you watched Part 1, then you know how we got this far. First, we lay in the darkest darks. Now, they, of course, are not very dark, but I'm only using the right side of the value scale, only values of 5 through 10, and with 10 being white. And I've left the white of the paper white. And now it's time to start to work on the other forms. So now what I'm looking at is not darks, but mediums. So the only rule going on in my head is any shapes that I put in have to be lighter in value than anything that I put in before, which means it will fit the definition because anything that I put in before is darker and or white. So almost any color I pick would work. Now, the reason that I picked yellow is because it's the complement to violet, and so I knew that it would create sort of a shimmer thing happening. And also because when you look at the peony either in real life or in the photograph, you can see there are yellow undertones, especially where the petals meet in the middle. And that comes from years of looking at a lot of peonies and painting a lot of peonies. Now, I didn't want to just use yellow. There's a little bit of orange going on there. And then I also made a mixture of a neutral, which is Naples yellow, with a little bit of a complementary, some of that violet in it. So it's you could argue it's a brown or a beige, but it's that kind of color when you looked at the photograph that you just say to yourself, I can't identify what that color is. I can see a shift. In other words, I can see that it gets darker in there but inside a petal, but I don't exactly know what that color is. And that tends to be where I'll use a neutral. If I truly can't identify the color either as one thing or another, then I know it's probably a neutral. The other reason I like to use neutrals is I think that they tend to knit the picture together overall. They're kind of like the connecting tissue. So that's as far as we've gotten here. Let's see, I don't want to talk too much. And I'm doing this no, this is not in real time. This is twice as fast as I usually work. All right, I haven't dried anything. I've left the whites of the paper white, and now it's time to put in the background. Now, if you look at the photograph, the background is almost black. And typically when you paint from photographs, you just kind of know over time that the darks in a photograph are really darker than they would appear in real life. So I like to sneak up on my darks in the background. Now, of course, if I had gone really dark black, it would have made the peony pop. I mean, the peony is going to look whiter in comparison to any dark background I could put in. But I wanted an overall warmth to the whole painting and to these forms. And so once again, I'm trying to stay in a gray range that is between a 5 and a 10, although you'll see I slip down into the, I do slip down into below 5. I probably got into a 6 or 7 before all was said and done, but I certainly didn't go all the way down to black, and I got there slowly. All right, so now I did dry the paper, and now I'm putting in, as you can see on the right side of that peony, there is a darker shape, or darker shapes, I should say, where the sun casts a pretty strong shadow, and I wanted to capture that. So I'm going over a few of the dark shapes that I had at the beginning and reinforcing those shadows. Now, the strange thing about the way I paint peonies now, which I only realized in watching this video, is I think in the past that I used to paint the petals, and I think what I'm doing now is I'm painting the shadows of the petals. And if you paint the shadows of the petals, then the whiteness of the petals kind of starts to form on its own. I may be wrong about that, but I feel like that's maybe the difference to what I've done in the past. Now, I always say nobody should paint peonies this way if they don't want to. Everybody has their own way, and if you Google painting peonies, you will see extraordinary ways that artists have painted peonies. This is just what I like to do. I like to find simple forms. I like to simplify shapes, and I like to keep my values separate. I like to be able to simplify and find darks, mediums, and lights. And then what happens is when you're right on top of the picture, it looks a little bit congested. But when you walk away from the picture and look back at it, and I'm looking at it now across the room, I think it looks I think it looks really good. And that's what happens in real life too. You know, when you come up next to a peony, it's all complicated. And when you walk away from it, you know, it's just a white blob. So, so I don't know if you would call it's I don't know if it's a trick of the eye or just choices that I'm making at this point in my life about how I want to paint and how I want to use use and manipulate forms. The brush I'm using is I think a number 14 or 12 flat. I think it's a 14, and I'm using mostly Winsor Newton professional grade paints, and the paper is 140 cold press paper. And if you want to know more about this, please join my YouTube channel where I have posted part 1 and lots of other demos of things. I don't always paint peonies. So remember to keep the whites of your paper white, your paints wet, mass for value, mix for color. See you next time. Bye-bye.